these ones. I should put that in. Welcome, everybody. I echo Kathy's comments there. Great stuff. Great participation. Loving the interaction in the past modules we've had. Now we're into the pointy end of safe system assessments, because this whole session is about telling you what you're going to be doing as your safe system assessment assignment, how you fill it out, what you write, where, how you display it. You're all, I believe, fairly up to speed now on the principles, how we sort of understand what influences exposure, likelihood, and severity. And you did that very well in your assignments, which all have been marked unless any late ones came in, and we'll get back to looking at those. So have a look at the assignments and just check any comments that came in on that. I really encourage you to have a look at those 6 fact sheets that we put into Moodle. They clarify some things, they help out in a number of situations. But yeah, so today's session is really about getting you ready to go out and do your safe system assessment on your project. Not your particular project, but the project we've assigned to you. And they're real projects. So they, sometimes don't have the best information available, or they're not, big, grand upgrade projects, but they're real projects, and everything that's happening out there, we should be trying to look at through a safe system lens. So, yeah, it's some real world stuff, and it should be close to your home or office. So it should be fairly convenient for you. All right, I'm going to share my my screen, Kathy, and I suppose, Kathy, in a little bit, probably nearer the end, maybe if you can jump into Moodle and show people where they can download some of this stuff. But we'll do that right at the end.
Terrific. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, so looking good?
Yep.
All right. So as per usual, pop your questions in, your comments. I might ask a few questions as we go, maybe give out a few prizes. But yeah, this one you're really going to want to pay attention to, because it's going to directly correlate to the mark you get on your safe system assessment, and how easy it is for you to do that and get things right. So I really want to cover where you can get the guidance, so some reference material on the actual sort of mechanics of doing a safe system assessment. I want to talk about and cover how to complete a safe system assessment matrix, and that's the meat of a safe system assessment. How to write up the report, what the sort of key parts of a report would be, and categorize treatments into primary and supporting, which we haven't really touched on at all yet. So when we come out with ideas on alterations to a project or to an existing bit of road or the like, we have a process for categorizing those in their alignment with safe system principles. So our primary gives us our best alignment with safe system principles, and our supporting are they're good road safety interventions. They're not going to get us to that aspirational safe system level that we're trying to achieve. So we've covered off the safe system. We've covered off the different elements. There's a different diagram for you than the one we looked at, but we're all pretty comfortable with that, I think. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that. I'm going to get into the safe system assessing. The principles we covered pretty comprehensively, especially in that first session about people making mistakes, that shared responsibility, the aspiration of zero death and serious injury, and us making decisions with that squarely in mind, and the vulnerability of the human body and the tolerance to physical force, how much force we can handle as humans before we break. This one we spent some time on this, didn't we? And that's good. Exposure, likelihood, severity as distinct elements, and we really need you to be able to separate things into those in order to do this safe system assessment. We looked at the curves, and you'll be coming back to these as an indicator of how you get to those scores that we need to for a safe system assessment. But that general 10% lines seen as pretty good. Starting point, a 30 km/h with pedestrians or cyclists, 50 km/h for right angle crashes, 70 km/h for head-on potential. And if it's that side of the line, we're talking fairly severe, high scores in our safe system assessment, which I'll take you through shortly. When you're that side of it, on that particular crash type, you're starting to go into the lower scores. Lower is better in a safe system assessment. There's a little bit more detail with some of these in there, and you can refer back to these. These are all slides out of the first module, so you can always refer back to that. And I've just got it sort of presented in lots of different ways. Now remember, these impact speed thresholds that I've got here, those are broad brush. I mean, they are. They're trying to, there'll be crashes that go either side of these and have the opposing results to what we would expect. It's trying to take into account a whole population, a major variety of crash types, different vehicles, different people, different, just, very minor little differences about how they were sitting in a whole raft of things. But they give us a general guide. Out of module 1, I put a colored sort of heat graph in there. Again, it's a general guide, but I really do suggest you refer back to that when you're doing your safe system assessments and you're trying to work out a score for severity. I'll get back to that. But really, today's all about how do you actually do this safe system assessment? What do you look at? What do you write? And where do you write it? And how do you present it? But before I jump into that, to give me an indication of any involvement anybody might have had in safe system assessment, can we just see if I can probably bring this up? Oh no, Kathy's already done it. Just wanted to just get an idea. So for my knowledge as I run through this, what has been your involvement with safe system assessments? From nothing, safe system what now? Which would be, I got no idea what you're talking about. I've heard of the term, but don't know much more. I've had one done on one of my projects. I've done one or been part of a team that's done one. I live, breathe, and eat safe system assessments. All right, getting some good answers in there. Thank you for everybody. Almost everybody voted there. We might close that off and display the results. Thank you, Kathy. So, yeah, this is pretty much what I had thought. There's a few of you who, the majority of you have heard the term. I don't really know too much more about the sort of specifics of it. A few of you have had them done on your project, so that's good. So 6 of you have had them done on your project, so that's a good thing, I suppose, for Queensland, that's happening. Certainly in your road safety policy, so there's going to be a lot more people jumping into that category. Yeah, by the end of this module, you'll be able to say, or the end of the next module, you'll be able to say you've done one. And somebody lives, breathes, and eats safe system assessments. I love it. It's good. Keen to know who that is. Let's have a chat. Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. No, that's good. I'm going to go through sort of from really the basics of it, because I think that's going to be a great starting point for everybody, and a refresher for anybody who's got a little more knowledge. So the Safe System Assessment Framework is an Austroads document. It came out in late 2016, so it's been around for a while now. And it really came about because of that need for people to be able to quantify how well their project is aligning with safe system principles. It was really, generated from that fact that you had people going, oh, that project's not safe system, or that project, yes, this is a safe system project, or chief executives or directors saying, no, we've got to do safe system. All our projects must be safe system. And people just going, what does that actually mean on the ground? The safe system's a philosophical thing, and I need something to make decisions with. That's something more practical. And so Austroads commissioned a report to the development of this framework as a way to try to quantify alignment with safe system principles, because that binary talk of it is safe system, it's not safe system was not helpful, and it was just causing debate and argument. And so this was produced. I was on the working group for this this document. I've been doing a lot of what we called safe system audits before that, which were really just trying to help projects get the highest alignment with safe system principles. This one went into a much more detailed, quantifiable approach with some numbers to it. So that's what we're going to take you through. But the first thing I'd say is that this framework is very, very scalable and versatile, really. So you can do it on major project upgrades, big, massive duplication bypasses or the like, or you can do it on very small projects, Splitter Island, new signage scheme, these sorts of things. You can do it in huge depth. You could do a 6-month safe system assessment if you wanted, but you can do it at a fairly light, rapid level as well, which can only take a smaller amount of time. Now that's probably one thing you need to be a little bit cautious of, because you could whip up a matrix in sort of 15 minutes, and I don't think that would be doing justice to a safe system assessment. That being said, it might be a good little exercise for a designer who just wants to do it on the side to see how they're going. But a formalized safe system assessment does take a bit more time than that, and you'll see the processes and steps that you have to go through. I'm going to jump into it instead of going through those little dot points on there. 2 jurisdictions have come out with their own guidelines now. So the framework is there from Austroads, which helps you along the journey. There's a little bit more, I suppose there are gaps in what the Austroads document was providing. And then there's some local jurisdictional specifics as to when you would do safe system assessments. And then, some of the areas that just weren't covered too well by Austroads, or not in enough detail to make as we've been doing safe system assessments. So that's Victoria and South Australia. Queensland doesn't have any specific guidelines at the moment. As I mentioned, it's in your road safety policy just as a line item that these will be done, but not specific guidance. But I do refer you to those to have a look at. They are, apart from the front cover, pretty much the same document with some, global replacing of Vic roads with DIPTI. Now, I'm going to actually start at the end. I'm going to start with the output. Now, this is just a little thing I like to do, because I like to see what I'm trying to produce. What's the output we're going to get from this safe system assessment? And this is just sort of the 1-page exec summary that people will be looking for when a safe system assessment is produced. This is sort of the wonderful thing that an executive director or the or the like can look at, or a director, they can look at, they can glance at, and they can quickly see what's going on with the project and its alignment with safe system principles. I'll explain this to you in a bit of detail as to what it's showing. But what we've got is this thing called a safe system assessment score on the y-axis. And I said that earlier, but lower scores in safe system assessments are better. The lower the score, the better the alignment with safe system principles. Now, a little trick to remember that is towards zero. We're aiming towards zero. We're aiming towards zero death and serious injury on our network. The scores we're looking for in here are aiming towards zero. Another way to remember it is that you could just think of the height of any of these bars in the graph represents risk. Higher the bar, higher the risk. Lower the bar, lower the risk. What we see on the x-axis are crash types, including the user when we get into these three at the end. So what we've got is run-off road crash, head-on crash, intersection crash, other, which actually tries to cover anything that has been missed in any of these other categories. I'll come back to it. Crashes involving pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. Other could be things like railway level crossing crashes, so crashes with trains, could be sideswipe crashes, could be crashes with animals, could be rear end crashes at a mid-block, so not associated with an intersection. So there's a few that could categorize in there. And then what you can see here is that you've got, well, this is just trying to represent three options that were presented, so designs. So there was a roundabout that they were proposing. There was a modified sort of T intersection with traffic signals, and a T intersection with traffic signals. The first bar on all of these is the existing conditions. That's what's currently there. So they've currently got an intersection and they're proposing changes to that intersection. And we can now see what that project is going to do, or in any option is going to do in terms of alignment with safe system principles. So without knowing anything about this, we know that, these are going to improve. We've got some more specifics on the design, but this is going to improve the intersection crashes significantly. The T intersection appears not to be doing that much. Not much is happening for motorcyclists, but you're easily able to sort of get a picture of what's happening. So that's what we're trying to sort of produce as one of the key outputs of a safe system assessment. One of the early things you do in a safe system assessment is understand the context of the project. We talked a bit about the importance of that, things like understanding the movement and place categorization, understanding the vehicle flow, understanding the road users that are present. You've really got to paint a picture of the area and the context before you jump into a safe system assessment. For your exercise, for your safe system assessment that you're going to be doing at the end of this module, we're not going to get you to spend time on this, and you can just make assumptions as you need. We don't want, the reason for that is we're trying to balance out just pure time that you're going to be spending on it to value of learnings out of it. We want to make sure that you can do a safe system assessment when you go out there into the future. And so all we really want to know is that you understand you would find out all about this context before you jumped into things. But for your assignment, just make assumptions, just any assumptions you want. And you can document those assumptions in your assignment.
Ken, sorry, just a quick question before you move too much further on. The previous slide, the graph, is that for just one intersection covering all options and risks?
Yes. That is just what it. So I'm actually going to use this as a live example a little bit later. I'll show you the intersection. I'll show you the designs, and then we'll walk it through. But I just want to show you sort of the end product, starting at the end. I don't know if that's what I like, how I like to do it, but others might not like that. Okay, we talked about this thing, the Safe System Assessment Matrix. Yeah, bear with me a second here. I'm just going to do something. Sorry, I don't know what people are seeing now, Kathy, but
Not appropriate, Ken. Not appropriate.
All right, is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So this is a matrix. Now, the words in each cell of this matrix are things that you would think about to get to a score. And you'll notice here, hope it's no surprise to you, that there are 3 rows in this matrix, and they are exposure, likelihood, and severity. That's why we've been banging on about it, because they're the 3 critical things of this safe system assessment. On the top, you see the crash types: run-off road, head-on, intersection, other, pedestrian side. So your job is to put a score in each cell of this matrix, and the scores range between a 0 and a 4. And so what you're going to do is say, well, what is the exposure to run-off road crashes? And you're going to put a score in there. You might put a 2. What is the likelihood of run-off road crashes? And you might put a 1. What is the severity of run-off road crashes? And you might put a 4. And then what you do, sorry, I should say, I will explain how you get to numbers soon. But what I'm doing is showing how the matrix works. What you then do is you multiply 2 by 1 by 4 to get a score for that crash type. And you do that for each of these crash types, and then you add them up. Equals, and then you get a score out of 448. If you got a score of 0 out of 448, that would be perfect alignment with safe system principles. If you got a score of 448 out of 448, that would be the furthest away from safe system principles. And that shows you that there is a spectrum there. But how do we get to these numbers? Well, what we do is we consider a whole lot of different things for each of these cells. For exposure, it's actually not too difficult, because you're really trying to get your AADT, or your number of pedestrians or number of cyclists or number of motorcyclists. And then you just go to our reference score sheet. Now there's a copy of this in the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework, in the Victorian guidelines, in the South Australian guidelines. We've put a copy in Moodle, we've put a copy on your memory stick. They're everywhere, and you've got them in these slides, right? But you need to refer to this. It's not just, I reckon I'll give it a 1. Well, you've got to base it on what's been written in this scoring reference sheet. So let's take a 1. So we've got exposure, likelihood, severity. We've got each of the scores, a 0, a 1, and then my next slide's got a 2, 3, and a 4. But let's start with a 1, okay? For exposure. Volumes of vehicles that might be involved in a particular crash type are particularly low, therefore exposure is low. For run-off road, head-on, and other crash types, AADT is less than 1,000 vehicles a day. You've got an actual AADT. You've got a volume trigger, okay? So this is just like the first thing that, one of the first things we do when we mark these assignments. We just check, we just run across your exposure scores and any volumes that have been given and check that you managed to go, the AAD was, I don't know, 500, and they've put a 1 because that's less than 1,000, tick. But if we go, the AAD's 500, and they've put a score of 3, cross, because it's clear cut. The figures are there. If you've got figures, it's clear cut. Now, where it can get a bit subjective is when you don't have figures, and it often comes in this one. For cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclist crash types, volumes are less than 10 units per day. So this is probably an insight into our industry, really. We tend to get really great traffic volume data for safe system assessments. And we tend to get a shrug of the shoulders for pedestrian, cyclist, and, well, motorcyclists. Sometimes we get better data. I don't know, there's quite a few, or no, I don't know. Sometimes we're getting a bit better. But anyway, you then just make a judgment call based on what you see out on the site, what you know about the site, what you talk to others about, and you make a call and you just document that. So that's a 1, less than 1,000 AAD, less than 10 units a day. Really, it's less than 10 units a day in the vicinity of the area that are exposed to the crashes. A 0, there is no exposure to a certain crash type. This might mean that there is no side flow or intersecting roads, so no intersections. So you're just doing a mid-block section, you've got no intersections, you put a 0 for intersection crashes. No exposure. Or there are no cyclists, no pedestrians, or no motorcyclists. I often find it fairly hard to ever put no pedestrians, but even some sort of remote areas, I'm always going, oh, there's a little bit of pedestrian risk here. You also got to factor in broken down vehicles and people outside their vehicles for those sorts of reasons and the like. Have put some 0s definitely for cyclists on motorways and those sorts of things where we occasionally, once every couple of years, you get a Dutch tourist who gets off the plane and unpacks their bike and rides it down the motorway through a tunnel or something, because that's just what they think is done. But it's so rare and frequent that we don't factor it into the scoring. We may make a little dot point on that in the more qualitative parts of a safe system assessment and the commentary, and maybe thinking about some education or some something like that. But that to me is not enough to get me off 0 exposure to cyclists on these motorways. Yes.
Just a question about cyclist, pedestrian, and motorcycle crashes. Are they considered collectively or separately? So if there's less than 10 cyclists, less than 10 pedestrians, but greater than 10 motorcyclists, then the score should not be a 1?
Yeah, so they actually get individually scored. And so it'll become clearer shortly, but you saw that matrix, the big matrix we were trying to fill out. Well, there was a column for pedestrians, there was a column for cyclists, and there was a column for motorcyclists. So they will get their own score each time. So, if you've got 5, you decide you've got 5 cyclists, it gets a score of 1. And if you've got 0 pedestrians, you could put a 0 for pedestrians, and if you've got 500 motorcyclists, you put a 4 for motorcyclists. So they'll each get their exposure score. They'll each get a likelihood score, and they'll each get a severity score.
Excellent, thank you.
So you see, let's continue on exposure. Exposure, a 2 is between 1,000 and 5,000, and between 10 and 50 units for the vulnerable road users. A 3, between 5,000 and 10,000, and 50 and 100 units. And a 4 is greater than 10,000 for your AADT, and greater than 100 for your head cyclists, motorcyclists. Now you may, I think when you start doing safe system assessments, you go, oh, depending on the areas you're working, if you're, if you're based in Brisbane or in some of your bigger centres, you're going, 10,000 is not actually that big an AADT to trigger off a 4. And sort of sometimes nor is 100 pedestrians in the area to trigger a 4 there. But to a degree, it doesn't matter a lot. I mean, we have had some circumstances where it's made a bit of an issue, but I've done hundreds of these assessments now, and it'd be sort of 1 or 2 where this has been a bit more of an issue. But the majority of the time, it's good. It just sets you a risk scoring platform. So then we look at the likelihood. And how do we get to a likelihood score on this? So here's the matrix again, and you can see there that we've now done our exposure line. We've just looked at the volume, looked at our data, we've put scores in this, actually, here's a little tip. Oh, no, not that one. Hang on. I'm going to delete these for a second. Erase all link on slide. So here's a little tip. Usually if you've got a 2 there, you're going to have a 2 there, and you're going to have a 2 there. Right? Those numbers are more often than not the same. This one will be either equal to that or higher. So it'll be a 2, a 3, or a 4. And then pedestrian, cyclists, and motorcyclists will be whatever they are. So then you're going to likelihood, and you go, right, what is the likelihood of a run-off road crash? And this is where you're going, okay, factoring all of this in. What's the speed? What's the geometry? What are the shoulders like? Are there barriers? What's the offset to the hazard? What are the signs and lines like? And I put etc. there because that's everything. And from the assignments that came in, this group's really going to do this line really well, I suspect. I mean, you're well tuned to that. Sight distance, skid resistance, visual deceit, something, a see-through effect, or you go into all of this. And you'll see lately that you actually document, you dot point out all the things that you think are influencing this score. And then you go to your sheet again and you look. And so let's go with a 1 again. So 1, it is highly unlikely that a given crash type will occur. Okay, that's pretty generic, isn't it? You don't have a lot of information there. You just got told highly unlikely. Let's go up a bit. Let's go up a score. Let's go up to 3. It is likely that a given crash type will occur. 2, unlikely. Wow, okay, we're not getting much specific intel here. And there is subjectivity to this score. The likelihood score is the most subjective of them. We have a fact sheet specifically on likelihood. And the reason for that is that it is important to understand that this is a relative likelihood to the rest of the network. Because if we took this at a non-relative individual, everything would be highly unlikely, wouldn't it? Because road crashes, in terms of the number of vehicles through an area or the like, are highly unlikely. Yes, they occur, but they're highly unlikely in that individual sense. But what we're looking for is a relative likelihood compared to the rest of the network. And this really aligns us to looking for infrastructure characteristics that we know increase the likelihood of a crash. And so those are things like curves, see-through effects, sight distance blocking, all those things that you were identifying. What I find is that road safety auditors are just magnificent at the likelihood column. They're just so many factors documented in their matrix. All the little bits and pieces are all there, and they work through this and they understand the relative likelihood between other areas of the network and come out with a score, and they're really confident on that. And a lot of you, I say that for auditors because that's a lot of what they're doing 24/7. A lot of you have been involved in a lot of this, and you do this really well. So the zero, there is only a minimal chance that a given crash type can occur for an individual road user, given the infrastructure in place. Only extreme behavior or substantial vehicle failure could lead to a crash. This may mean, for example, 2 streams of traffic do not cross at grade, or pedestrians do not cross the road. So, these could be those sorts of things. But it's pretty rare to give a 0 to likelihood because you're dealing with humans. And we've got to factor our mistakes into this. A 4, the likelihood of individual road user error leading to a crash is high given the infrastructure in place, e.g. high approach speeds to a sharp curve, priority moving control filtering across several lanes of opposing traffic, and high speeds. But I tend to use 4 for where I see specific infrastructure deficiencies that I know will actually start drawing crashes out. Adverse super elevation around a curve, masking issues, these sorts of things. 3, some of that as well, but also, if there's just inherent deficiencies in the intersection type, so like red light running, really, signalized intersection, you go, well, great sight distance to the signals, LEDs, masked arms, good pavement, good delineation, great warning signage, speeds are at 80 kilometers per hour. I'm putting likelihood at 3 because I just know that there will be red light running. The likelihood is high of those crashes happening. And so you've got to make some judgment calls on this. Now some of you are probably going to start getting uncomfortable about this. You're going to go, well, hang on a second, it's a bit subjective. You'll see why this doesn't actually matter a huge amount as long as the same people do the existing conditions scoring and then all the options. And it plays out that it's all a relative scoring rather than you getting a score of 220 and the other team getting a score of 180. It doesn't make either wrong as long as we're seeing a same relative change between existing conditions and the different options. I'll come back to that. So that's likelihood. And now we go to crash severity. Now, severity is somewhere in between in terms of the subjectivity of the scoring, because we have some data to work with and there's a bit of judgment required in it. Let's go back to the matrix though. You see here, here's a few prompt factors for you to think about in the likelihood. Just a few, definitely not all of them. You got lots more. But the severity, he is saying speed, the severity of roadside hazards, speed, percentage of heavy vehicles, angles, speeds, angles, heavy vehicles. You might find some other particular features. Sometimes we've done, like, take pedestrians, for example, done some safe system assessments, outside, massive sort of retirement villages style places. And the majority of the pedestrians were old and frail. And so the severity, we just bump that up a little bit just to take that into account. But the majority are just speeds, angles are really your big ones at play. You could do a little bit of analysis of things in cyclists, like helmet use and those sorts of things, but not too much there. But you go to then the severity score. Let's take a 1 again, okay? Should a crash occur? Okay, that's a good way to start, because severity is all about now the crash is happening. The one that you're looking at and you're predicting, it is happening. How bad is it going to be? It is highly unlikely that it will result in a fatality or serious injury to any road user involved. Kinetic energies are fairly low during the crash, or the majority are effectively dissipated before they reach before reaching the road user. So effectively dissipated basically means something like a barrier. So the energy might be high in the initial hit, but it's dissipated along the barrier before it actually gets to the occupant of that vehicle. And this is where we want you to refer back to that coloured score sheet graph, which I'm going to bring up in a second. Or actually, Kathy, if you're there, do you want to bring that up? It's in module 1. One of the early slides. It's a graded color graph with the numbers. So let's go up to a 3, for example. Should a crash occur, it is likely that it will result in a fatality or serious injury to any road users involved. Kinetic energies are moderate, but are not effectively dissipated before reaching the road user. So people get a little bit caught up between likelihood and severity here, because when something they feel is very low chance of ever happening, they often want that to affect their severity score. But you've got to have this clear separation in your mind and in your thinking. You go, no, okay, it may be very rare that it's going to happen. We've accounted for that in the likelihood. The severity is, if one did happen, how bad is it going to be? Now, you need some judgment on that, because you might imagine a run-off road crash, and you might imagine all sorts of scenarios, one where they've left the road, but they've managed to slow down and then, hit a power pole at really, really low speed, just touched it, or they're going. You've got to probably skew yourself to the end of the fatal and serious injury. So it's saying the likelihood of a fatal and serious injury occurring. So you're thinking squarely around that. And so 0, should a crash occur, there is only minimal chance that it will result in fatal or serious injury to relevant road users. This might mean kinetic energy transferred during the crash are low enough that do not cause fatal or serious injury, or that excessive energies are effectively dissipated before getting to the road user. The users may refer to the critical impact speeds for different crash types while considering impact angles, roadside hazards, barriers, and the like. So the critical impact speeds are really the graphs that I showed you at the start of this session, and also this coloured one that Kathy might have or might not have ready to go. Or Kathy might not even be there. That's okay. I'll find it for you in a second. Oh, you're on mute if you want to talk, Kathy. But there it is. That is the one. Well done. So you can see there that we've got the crash speed that you're predicting these sorts of crashes are going to be happening, and you need a little bit of judgment on that. You've got the crash type down the side, different crashes, and then you've got this sort of general grade, and then there's a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, and they're the corresponding scores for your safe system assessment matrix. General guidance, you're going to need to use your judgment. In fact, I think there's a little disclaimer at the bottom. Yeah, general indication only, professional judgment required. So thank you, Kathy. That's excellent. Perfect. So there you go. You've now got your, you know how to find your exposure score, your likelihood score, and your severity score. And you've got a matrix, and that's how you sort of go through and get to a final score. So I'm going to show you this like output of a matrix. And I don't expect you to read the words in this because they're very small. But what I want you to notice here is that it's not just a score, is it? It's a justification of how you arrived at that score. And you can see here, so exposure is fairly clean because you just put in, if you've got the numbers, you just can say what the number is. And then you say, and so that results in a 3. But look, for likelihood, things that increase make me want to make this score higher. This. Things that make me want to make this score lower are this, and this. Thus, I've gone at a 2.5 out of 4. That's probably a bad example to choose because it goes to a 0.5. But you can go to a half. You can go to a 0.5. You can't go any more detailed than that. In fact, there was a lot of debate on the working group around this because we said, well, just the idea of putting numbers to this. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to give this to a whole lot of engineers and technical officers and people who love numbers, and they will just, run this to it within a centimetre of its life in terms of numbers. And we saw that, some of the first few safe system assessments came back with, 3 decimal places to one of these. That is not the intention of it, and it should be kept at that fairly broad brush level. And the reason for that is good and important, and it is because this is about us making stepped changes in road safety, not tweaking around the edges. So what we'd often see is people want to, we'll double up the warning signs. That'll solve our road safety problem. No, it won't. That'll maybe do a little bit of reduction in one of your scores. Maybe. Will it even be enough to give you a 0.5 change in a likelihood? Debatable. You'd have to make that judgment call. But in the end, it's really not going to show you a major difference in the actual score outputs you're going to get. And that's one of the beauties of the safe system assessment framework, is that it clearly shows that. It goes, we're not saying that what you're doing isn't, going to improve things, but don't fool yourself into thinking we're getting high alignment with safe system principles by putting up a warning sign. No, we need to do substantial changes in the speeds and the likelihoods and, potentially the exposures, so the severity. So anyway, that's just to say you can go to a 0.5. It's not preferred, but you can if you really, really need, but not more than that. So you do that then again for severity, what increases, some dot points there, what decreases, some dot points there. You get your scores, you multiply them through, you get a score, a product score for each of these. You add that, you add that, you add that, you add that, and it equals that. And this one got 118.5 out of 448. That was his existing condition score. Make sure you remember to multiply here. This times this times this. That's one thing that a few people get wrong in their assessments, is that they, for some reason, add these, and then they get multiply down, add across. Okay, I think the easiest way is to do a fairly quick worked example, but I'm going to pause there, Kathy, and see if people have got questions or want to chat a bit about what I just said, or maybe want to unmute themselves. We can have a bit of a chat about it.
Thanks, Ken. So we've got a question about where was the moderate crosshairs in the graph? Serious graph fatality, 10%, where is serious? And I think this is back on the coloured one that I showed. I'll just pop that up again, and if you can talk to it, please.
Okay, so the numbers in white there correspond to the scoring reference sheet number. So a 0 is virtually, we're fairly confident that it's a very low likelihood of resulting in death or serious injury if a crash happens in this. So a 20 kilometre per hour head-on crash, car to car down the bottom, I'm pretty much going to say it's a 0. Very unlikely to result in death and serious injury. If we go, maybe take anyone you want. Kathy, what do you want to do? Pedestrian versus a heavy vehicle. Okay. Oh no, you want to go to another one?
Oh, sorry. Yep, no, pedestrian versus heavy vehicle. Yep.
Pedestrian versus heavy vehicle. And you can see there, if it happens at 60 kilometres per hour, we're saying, well, it's pretty much going to be death to the, or it's a very, very high likelihood of death or high level serious injury to the pedestrian. Obvious, isn't it? I mean, that's that. But it starts to get, and the reason why these sort of merge into themselves is because it gets a bit murky. And to be honest, the research is, there's a fair bit of murkiness to the research. The most well-referenced research in this are the Elvig curves, and there's a lot of debate about those. We've got a couple of people doing their PhD thesis on recreating these different, crash forces for the current vehicle fleet in Australia, so we're continuing to evolve. So you need some professional judgment, but that's going to help you out a bit. Yeah, there's another question that popped up, I think.
There is, yes. So do we assume that the crash happens at the speed limit, or assume they might be a little bit over or a little bit lower because they reacted and slowed down a bit before the collision?
Okay, well, that's a bit site specific. What you need to do is factor in their operating speed. So, speed limit may influence that, but if you know that they're all, there's a 40 kilometre per hour speed limit, but everybody's going way faster than that, you're going to factor that in. You may factor in a little bit of reaction time and washing off of speed, but that really I would sort of also factor into that, sight distance. Is it open? Is it clear that they can see where this crash is going to happen? Are they going to have reaction time? Are they going to be alert, that whole time? So, it's a bit of a balance, and you've got to kind of make a judgment call on that. But generally, operating speed and aligning it to this crash speed, maybe reducing a little bit off it is something you can do. Where are you heading to now, Kathy?
Oh, you can see me. Okay, that's good to know. To the fact sheets, because there's a question about intersection scoring. Do you add the AADT together? And if I've got it right, it's in the fact sheet. Is it, Ken?
Here's one we prepared earlier. No, this is actually, that's not the right one.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good one. Leave that one open because I'll come back to that. Exposure
at intersections, yeah.
And here we go. So there's our intersection. And I think I showed this one to you last module, but it probably didn't click as to why I was telling you this. But now it's clicking. 9,000 on the main line, 1,000 on the side road. You add those to get to 10,000. And then you look at your scoring reference sheet, and a 10,000 or more is a 4. So there's your score of 4. But if you, for this example, we purposely chose that because if you just used the 9,000, it would be a 3. If you use the 1,000, it would be a 2. So there you go. There's your fact sheet on that. Let's go to the other fact sheet you had there, which I don't think has a nice little diagram. So just up, Kathy. Yep, that's it. So this is trying to say, well, hang on, what's an intersection crash? You've got an intersection on the picture there, and if somebody leaves the road there and hits that power pole in the background, is that an intersection crash? It's sort of in the intersection envelope, isn't it? Is that an intersection crash? What about if you had a cross intersection and 2 vehicles head-on crashed in that cross intersection? Is that an intersection crash or is that a head-on crash? So have a read of this fact sheet, but the real answer to this is it is an intersection crash if you have movements it's got to be vehicle to vehicle crash, and there has to be a movement across roads. So it has to be a turning movement, or it has to be a straight on a crossroad or the like. It has to be the intersection crash. If a vehicle leaves the road at an intersection and hits a power pole, that is a run-off road crash. Even though it happened to occur within the intersection category, it's that. Now, a lot of you know your crash codes. I think you call them DCA codes in Queensland or RUM codes. Well, we call them DCA codes in Victoria. New South Wales calls them RUM codes. Somebody can just type that in for me, but I'm gonna go with DCA codes. Yep, good. I think I was right. So a DCA code is a very good way for you to work this out, because if you would code it as a run-off road crash, then it's run-off road in that categorization. So you focus on that way of thinking about it. And so what we actually see is the score of run-off road crashes tends to spike a little bit around intersections because there's poles, there's turbulence, and so the likelihood's up, and yeah, that plays out in our crash numbers as well. Fatal and serious injuries, run-off road around intersections is a bit higher than some other areas. I mean, it's high in other areas. Okay, I think Bart's asking, rear-end crash 4 cars back from the intersection. Great question. So rear-end crashes either go into the other category or the intersection category. And if the one you are predicting and thinking about is a result of anything to do with the intersection, it goes in the intersection category. If it's the result of something else, so that could be a mid-block pedestrian crossing, it could be vehicles exiting driveways or service centres or the like, that is an other, and you'd specify that. And so it doesn't matter how far back it is. So even if it's a kilometre back, you go queuing back from this intersection, it's saturated, it just queues back forever, and it gets to this point where there's really bad end of queue sight distance at this point, intersection score. Good question. Keep them coming in. You're doing well.
We're at the halfway point, Ken. So I think you're maybe good time for a stand up and a quick stretch, and then you're going to run us through an example.
Yeah, all right. Let's, 2 minutes?
2 minutes sounds good.
Okay, getting back into it. Are we?
Yes, good.
All right, let's keep moving along. A lot of this stuff's often easier when you see a live example, and certainly we very much know that as soon as you get out there and start doing it, it's all going to really become clear in your mind. So the best way to learn is to do one, and you're going to do one after this session. Okay. So here's our intersection, and you know, this has been modified down a little bit, this one, just to make it easier to present and show you in a short period of time. But here's the intersection we're looking at. You can see it's you know, one lane in each direction, and we've got side road there. It's sort of down a hill, sweeps around. This photo is looking from, you know, the other way. It sweeps around a curve. It's got some guideposts, not much. Line marking's not too bad. Giveaway sign there. There's a few more little pictures of it. They've got some challenges on turning vehicles and sight distance and things like that. Power pole there. It's got some lighting. There's a creek around the corner there with a bit of wooden bridge rail thing, which isn't going to do too much, containing anything maybe a pedestrian it would contain. So they're looking to upgrade this, and they want to upgrade it, and they're saying, you know, we're at the options stage, and we want to find which option has the best alignment with safe system principles, and what else we can do to those options to make it a better alignment with safe system principles. And we want to put that into the mix of the complex thing that we've got to do, which is this project, because it's, yes, we definitely want highest alignment with safe system principles, but they've also got to consider environmental, cultural heritage, community expectations, travel impacts, travel time impacts, you know, encouragement of active transport modes. Yeah, I don't need to tell this group, you know, the massive amount of stuff in these sorts of projects. But they've come up with their design. So this is their first design. So we're going to do, we're thinking about a roundabout. Okay, here's our sort of concept of a roundabout. You know, moved it around a little bit to try and minimize land acquisition and bits and pieces here and there. So that's one. Modified T, signalized modified T with pedestrian crossings on this leg and this leg, and conventional T intersection signalized on this leg, the slip lane there. Now, when you get in there and you do your you know, context workshop, or you talk to them about the context of it, you're going to ask lots and lots of questions. And what I used to do was get in the room, we lay these out, and I just ask questions. Well, what's this? So, oh, what's going on there? What's that? I say, oh, well, that's a development that's coming, and I'll say, well, you know, where's your pedestrian design line? Where are the major pedestrian lanes? Where are they going? How many vehicles are there? What's the well, you know, what are the numbers of pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists? Are you know, predicting those to increase, decrease? What's going on there? Are you signalizing these crossings on the slip lanes? What's your plan there? I say, have you got speed data? Have you got volume data? You want to collect as much of this as you can to make a more informed, you know, decision. When I get a signalized intersection like this, I'll say, so what's your plan? Are you fully controlling the right turn? Is it going to be red arrow? Is it going to be red, you know, fully controlled right turn for the full day? Now, at this stage of a project, they might not know this. They might go, I don't know. We'll get to that. We'll do some traffic modeling. We'll work that out. So what I always do is assume the worst. if they say, oh, we don't know yet, I say, go and I assume the worst always. The reason I assume the worst is because when they get their safe system assessment, you've got recommendations. And so take fully controlled right turn, for example. So red arrow on this turn. And if they say, we don't know, and I say, oh, okay, I'm going to assume you will do it, a fully controlled right turn. And then I score things accordingly, and this comes out well, and everything continues on, and they don't do it. We haven't given an accurate reflection of the safe system alignment because of that. If I assume not, and I put it as a recommendation, they commit to that in there, or don't commit to it. But you get some clarity around that, and it's scored appropriately. If they say, "Yep, we're going to fully control this for sure," okay, and I write that clearly in the report to say this will be fully controlled. This is in when I'm writing up the scope of the project. Here are the check appendix for the designs. And here are the features that are happening. The slip lanes are being controlled with signals, traffic signals. It's got fully controlled right turn. These have been assumptions that are made in our scoring. So they're the three options that they've come up with, and a whole lot of different assumptions or non-assumptions as such. And then, as I showed you before, the first thing you do is the existing conditions. No project. You're just looking at what's currently there. You score that. And so we're saying, well, runoff road. So the bend in that road has substandard radius. Speed limit 60, but advisory is 35. There's minimal to no shoulders. Guideposts are missing at some locations. There's generally no curb and channel. These are all things that are going to increase the score. What's going to decrease the score? Lanes are wide, appear to be greater than 3.5. Advisory speed limit is in play. There is edge lines, and there's street lightings. So you factor those in, you look at it, you ponder it, you say, oh, okay. And compared to other intersections in the area and other intersections across, we're going to make that 2.5. Yeah. So that's the likelihood one. I should have started with exposure, but the exposure was simply to say, what's the volume of traffic on the main line, and then just land it back to the score sheet, and you get a 3. And then you got what is going to increase the severity of these crashes. You've got fixed unshielded hazards at the roadside, trees and power poles. You've got unshielded drop-off to culvert on the outside of the bend, speeds maybe high coming into the town on the downhill. So they're all things that are increasing that making me want to make that score higher, but decreasing it, speed's likely to be low coming out of town as well. And then thinking about that in the relative context of other areas, 60 and the like, it came out with a 2. And then you get your score when you add it all up, and you've got 15 out of 64 for runoff road. You just simply go through and you do that for each of them. Add them up, get to your score. Yeah, I don't think I need to go through all of these in the same way. I just want to go to the next one and show you, right. Then you say, okay, now they're building a roundabout. And I've put a little roundabout symbol up here. I tend to do this just for ease of reading, because if you're doing lots of options on a project, it can get a little bit confusing because you've got matrices, you can have heaps of them. And so to try and help people be able to work out which one we're talking about, I put these little symbols in. You can present it in this sense however you want. But you'll see here, what we've taken is the existing conditions matrix, copied it. Once you're happy and you've covered everything, you've put all the factors you want to put in there, you copy it, you paste it in for the design option you're looking at, and then you go about altering it. So you can see here that some have been crossed out. So when they build a roundabout there, we're crossing that out. And we're crossing this one out, and we're crossing this one out, because they don't exist anymore because a roundabout's been built. But some might remain. And some new things might be added that decrease or increase. So we've improved sight lines, and the substandard bend has been removed. So you go about crossing out things from the existing conditions that have been removed with your design, adding things new in red or a different color so it's clear these things are new, these things are gone. And if you change a score, you make it a different color. So all those scores have changed. That one didn't change for some reason. And you go through and you do that for exposure, likelihood, and severity. Now, exposure may only change if something's being proposed that's actually going to alter traffic flow or pedestrian movement or cyclist movement, but it may change. You do it then for each option. Same thing, take that existing conditions, modify it based on what's going to change your scores. And then you're able to produce overall scores out of 448. And so what we saw for this one was that the existing conditions were 118. If they build a roundabout, it goes down to 90. If they do a modified T with signals, it goes down to 99. If they do a T intersection with signals, it goes down to 105 in this specific scenario. So what that says to me, I mean, just at a high level, I go, right, everything that they had planned is going to improve road safety, improve alignment with safe system principles. But the one that's going to, in this situation, give it the highest alignment with safe system principles is the roundabout. And the roundabout at 90, has not given us perfect alignment with safe system principles. There's still maybe more things that they could do with that roundabout to get it even lower, that score. And same with the others. Now, they may say, oh, thank you for that. And because of all these other reasons, we've had to go with option 3B. And we know it's not the best alignment with safe system principles. What else can we do to this option 3B to get it better? And so this is why you're always providing recommendations for all the options anyway. And you can produce that however you want. That's so the slide back was numbers. This is just in graphs with numbers. It's no different there. It's presentation. That's the one we originally saw. So hopefully now it makes a bit more sense to you what you're seeing. So this is the next level refinement because it's broken down by the crash type. So you can see where these scores are coming from. Why aren't we getting as much? Well, maybe it's because we don't get any intersection improvement for some reason from this one because of angles and speeds and the like. And so once you've done all that, you get to the point where you're going to make some recommendations. Now, we've gone back from calling them even recommendations. I think we call them considerations because we don't want it to be, projects should look at these and try to very genuinely consider them and strive to try to put in place measures to get that score as low as possible. But there's a lot of ways you can get to these lower scores, and it's not really for us in a complex project to be dictating what should or should not happen. So ideas for consideration is a sort of lighter touch on how this is played out. But when you come up with an idea, they get categorized into either a primary treatment or a supporting treatment. Now, you very much would not put in what we call a non-safe system treatment as a idea for consideration, but you might use that in your language as you're talking about different things. So that's why I've put it in there. But the definition of a primary treatment is road planning, design, and management considerations that virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injury occurring in association with foreseeable crash types. So you could have something that's primary for runoff road, but may not help some other crash types. So a good example of primary is maybe a flexible continuous barrier system, which is primary for runoff road crashes. We may not give it primary for other, maybe if we're thinking about very large vehicles. We may not give it a primary for motorcyclists if it doesn't have underarm protection or a few other features. But for that runoff road crash, it virtually eliminates death and serious injury for passenger vehicles. We know there will be very rare circumstances where it doesn't quite do its job or some freak incident occurs in the crash, but we know that it's so highly effective that it gets that primary categorization. Supporting road planning, design and management considerations that improve the overall level of safety associated with a foreseeable crash type, but are not expected to virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injuries occurring. And another little qualifier is it doesn't change the ability for a primary treatment to be implemented in the future. So an example, let's stick with our runoff road. Audio tactile edge line is a good example. So vibro line, some people call it. Some people call it rumble strips, but that's an incorrect use of the term. Rumble strips go across the travel lane. Audio tactile edge line is on the edge. Audio tactile edge line is a great example of a supporting treatment. We know it reduces the likelihood of crashes. Absolutely. Wonderful. But we know that even if we roll that out, crashes will still happen and the severity will be high. Because, yeah, some people won't be alerted. They'll be alerted late and make sharp, vehicle movements. It's not protecting the users when the crash happens. It's not managing energy. It's solely reliant on the likelihood of crashes, and we know that it doesn't get us to that virtual elimination. And a little bit of a rule of thumb is that really, if you're not addressing the severity of the crashes, it's highly unlikely to be a primary treatment. And so examples of primary treatments generally are things like roundabouts for passenger vehicles, physically separated cycle facilities for cyclists, very low speed, raised pedestrian crossings for pedestrians, and those sorts of things. Now, this is one of the areas that a lot of you are going to get wrong in your safe system assessment. And so what I want you to do is go to the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework when you're trying to categorize and have a look, because what they've done is taken quite a few treatments and categorized them within each crash type into primary or supporting or non-safe system. So if you're looking at your design and you go, oh, well, I should really, do a splitter island here. And you go, that would incredibly help things. So, is that a primary or is that a supporting? Go to the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework, look at the crash types, see if they've already listed splitter island, or if not, something that does similar things, and you'll discover that it's in 999 cases out of 1,000, it's a supporting treatment of splitter island. Because we know that it does a good job in reducing crashes, but we know when they still occur, they're at the same speed, they're pretty much the same angle, and death and serious injury is still going to occur when that crash happens, and it hasn't eliminated the chance that it ever will crash, we haven't eliminated the chance that it'll happen. Kathy, any questions come up at this point? What are we at? 11:20.
Yes, please. So earlier when you were talking about existing conditions, just to help clarify, please, existing conditions are for the current road state, but it includes expected increases in pedestrians due to the development or not?
Very good question. I thought somebody might bring that up after I said there's a development there. So in order to compare like for like, that's it. You need to compare like for like. So what you do in that situation is you'd say, okay, you can do multiple matrices. So you could say, I'm going to do a matrix on existing conditions in 5 years' time with that facility open, and I'm going to expect this many pedestrians, for example. And then I'm going to do the roundabout with the same volumes, and I'm going to do the signals with the same volumes. What we don't want done is the existing conditions with the existing volumes and the design with the development completed at higher volumes, because you're then not comparing like for like in terms of the infrastructure. So it's a good point. So often, like on a big project, we will sometimes do an opening safe system assessment matrix and a 25-year safe system assessment matrix based on their traffic modeling and what they think it's all going to be doing.
What if the development then doesn't go ahead?
Well, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, so you'd probably have an existing conditions, no development, day one open versus that, or you'd have the post, the developments there, and you'd have existing conditions with those volumes and the like. And the reason it doesn't matter is because it's a relative scoring. So as long as you do both in those scenarios. I hope that makes sense.
I think so. Any other questions, please do send them through.
So primary and supporting. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, this group is going to use that Austroads guide, and I'm not going to have to write in a lot of your assignment report cards that you haven't quite got your head around primary supporting, because you've gone and you've looked at the Austroads guide and you've looked at the categorization and you've got your head around it all. So you don't actually stop after the matrix, or some people in their safe system assessment like to do this step before they do the matrix, and that's fine as well. But what we look at is the other elements of the safe system in a full safe system assessment. This is next module. In a week's time, I'm going to talk you through some of the sort of policy stuff, some of the different options about when safe system assessments are done, a couple of different types of safe system assessments, because there's a rapid and a full safe system assessment. But you don't need to worry about that yet, because we just the mechanics of how to do these things. But in a full safe system assessment, you actually have to answer each of these questions in a qualitative way, and it may lead to ideas that you have for the project to inject. And so these are the questions straight out of the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework. Are road users likely to be alert and compliant, and are there factors that might influence this? What are the expected compliance and enforcement levels? Alcohol, drugs, speed, road rules, driving hours. What is the likelihood of driver fatigue? Can enforcement activities be conducted safely? Are there special road users? So entertainment precinct, elderly, children, on-road activities, motorcycle routes? Is there distraction from environmental factors? Is there a big pineapple or a big fish or something? Commerce, tourism. Are there risk-taking activities? So you just write some commentary, some thoughts, some understanding around this. This one, I often talk to the police. I just call the highway patrol, say, hey, I'm doing some road safety assessment of a planned project upgrade to the, whatever it is, Princess Highway. You know, can you tell me a little bit about some of the road safety challenges that are there? Anything in particular you've got concerns about? How do you go about enforcing the area? Often they're just wonderful. They love this idea that people are talking to them about this. And you actually can sometimes find things that you go, wow, that's interesting. Okay, they go, we had one Yan Yin Road and big, massive $101 million duplication project. And talking to the police, explaining so they're planning to duplicate it, just interested in this. They say, we've never actually been able to do much enforcement on this road because we find it too dangerous to set up anything substantial there. We'll occasionally pull an individual over and it gets hard. We've got to take them, try and find a side road and these sorts of things. But really, they go, we've struggled to enforce around that. And then we were able to say, well, hang on, what about, okay, well, we've got this big project and there's a couple of areas where there's a bit of space. We're going to easily try to accommodate a few areas. They're like, that would be amazing. So then there was the ability to create a little area for the booze bus to be put upstream, a number plate recognition vehicle, and the ability then for them to flag vehicles through into a protected area for their officers, basically. It was, you know, it's almost like a purpose-built facility. It is a purpose-built facility, but it just happened that it was fairly easy to integrate into the project for almost no extra real cost. It was part of the area they were going to plan to use for construction anyway. And it's just a wonderful outcome in a wider thinking than just the pouring of the concrete and the barriers and the speeds and those sorts of things. So it's acknowledgement where we are part of a system here. So those sorts of things can pop out of this. And you've got to be very broad with your thinking. In the vehicles one, and this is a bit of a, this one, I suppose, is more around the versatility of the Safe System Assessment Framework. You'll see why shortly, but I'll show you. What is the level of alignment with the ideals of safer vehicles? Very general, broad question, trying to talk about the fleet. And the reason I say it's the versatility is a lot of these questions are probably targeted at doing a safe system assessment on a whole community, town, or a mine site, or the like, where you've got almost a contained fleet, or you know what the fleet is, and you can have a look at the safety features in the vehicles of that fleet. When you're doing it on a public intersection, it's a bit hard. I mean, you can make a little bit of commentary. You go, well, there's a lot. We've noticed a lot of old vehicles or the like with likely low safety features, but you're not really making big assessments in these sorts of things in an open public one. But as I say, when you do a safety assessment on a whole community, like a remote community or a mine site, as I say, this stuff makes a lot more sense. Other factors that might attract a large number of unsafe vehicles, that one you might do in your public open road. Is the percentage of vehicles too high for the proposed or existing road design? Is the route used by recreational motorcyclists? Are there resources in the area to detect non-roadworthy, overloaded or unregistered vehicles and thus removing them from the network? Can enforcement of these activities be conducted safely? Has vehicle breakdown been catered for? Vehicle breakdowns, that one often is a motorway style or a very sort of, high volume arterial one where there's not maybe space for breakdown, or maybe there's continuous barrier systems close to the road. And then post-crash care, we get into this final one. Are there issues that might influence safe and efficient post-crash care in the event of a severe injury, e.g. congestion, access, stopping space? Again, mainly motorway ones there in that sense. Do emergency and medical services operate as efficiently and rapidly as possible? Well, that's going to be relevant to quite a few of you probably in some of the remote areas, and how quickly and how effectively can people be treated? Are other road users and emergency response teams protected during the crash event and their treatment? Are drivers provided the correct information to address travel speed on the approach to and adjacent to the incident? Is there reliable information via radio VMS? Is there provision for e-safety safety systems based on modern communication technologies, cooperative ITS, and those sorts of things? These are some, vehicles of the future style questions, which some of these you might just write not applicable or nothing that I am aware of, and that's fine. Some of the assessments of this have led to the ideas of things like helicopter landing pads in mountainous areas, extremely hard to get to, taking a long time to extract injured parties. What else has come up? Even just sort of lobbying for phone reception improvements and those sorts of things. So it's fairly broad, and you can kind of do what you want with it and think about broadly what could be done: education, enforcement, encouragement activities to try to get us a holistic safe system. You sort of, in a safe system assessment, you write little notes under this, document things, and then you may put them into your ideas for consideration. Now, for your safe system assessment, which you're going to be doing shortly, we're not actually going to require you to go through this. Okay? If you do a full safe system assessment, you will use this. Questions before I talk about what you would report?
No questions at this stage, Ken.
Thank you. So a safe system assessment report has an identification of the type of assessment, a rapid or a full. I'll talk to you about that next module. List of members in the team. So we do like to, a bit like road safety audits, we like to do assessments in teams. For your one, you're going to do it. Oh no, there might be teams actually. I think you're welcome to do it as a team, but we, and when you do them properly, it's always good to work in a team, different perspectives. It's lots of fun when you're heavily debating whether it's a 2 or a 3 in the matrix. That's often sometimes when you get to a 2.5 because you can't decide. You list your meetings, your site inspections, and the process, just so people are clear on that. The project background, and put in any specifics that you've been told about the project. The context, you fill out those prompt questions, which are straight out of the Austroads framework. Then you do your matrix and your score and your comments on factors that increased or decreased the score, and you do that for the existing conditions and all the design options. Make your commentary around other safe system components, being the people, the vehicles, and the post-crash care, and suggest any treatments changes with the proposed designs, which would improve alignment with safe system principles. Now, we've put a safe system assessment, I think an example one, into your memory stick and onto Moodle because we want you to be consistent when we do these in the future. So please use that. Feel free to copy it. Not precious on our intellectual property or anything like that, but I'll show you shortly. There's a couple of templates available publicly from the Victorian government, actually, which you can also use as well. We're going to show you now what your assignment is. And your assignment is to undertake a safe system assessment, albeit that we've modified and chopped bits off to make it less time consuming for you, just some of the meat of it. And I'll jump into the Word document that you're going to have to go through in a second. But I might as well, while I'm on the slides here, just briefly touch on site safety. Now you all work in a road authority, and you're all very aware of site safety, and you've got lots of good safety procedures and protocols in place. So I'm not hugely concerned, but make sure you're wearing your high-vis vest. Stay off the road. This is not there's no real need to be measuring lane widths very accurately, or putting your head down to look at the crossfile of the road or anything like that. You're out there to get a general feel for how the intersection operates. What are some of the features in the areas? Are there things that you haven't picked up from Street View? Really, for me, it's always about seeing how it's used. Yeah, you can get a bit of an idea from your near maps image and your Street View and everything on some of the features, what's sort of there, but how it's used and all of those, how it is during different times of the day and with the sun, and what people actually do out there, and what type of vehicles are going through. That stuff, it's very hard to pick up that feel of it unless you actually go there. And that's the sort of stuff you don't need to be standing on the road to really do. Don't be a hazard yourself, so don't stand there in a group and make people walk out onto the road to get around you and those sorts of things. Park safely, don't make your vehicle block sight lines or push cyclists into high-speed lanes. And we have a safe work method statement, and I think one of the first questions in your quiz after this module is, have you had a look at that and are you agreeing to comply with it? It's nothing that your own organisation won't be requiring of you anyway on any site visit. Things like don't go out there intoxicated, wear your seatbelts and everything as you're going in the car there, and don't drive for more than X hours and the like. Now, none of you are going to need to do that because all the sites are fairly close to you. But it's just an extra level of confidence for us that you'll be safe when you're out there. Okay. What I'm going to do is go to the Word document, unless Kathy, you want to show how they get to the Word document in Moodle.
Yes, that'll be good. I'll do that if that's okay. So there's a couple of things here. One is, this is where the Safe System Assessment Framework was that you spoke about earlier, Ken. So there's a copy of that in there. And where we're at is Module 5, Complete Your Safe System Assessment. The Word template is here, and then your sites are near your office locations. And so we've got your site in here and then your name next to it as per what we've been given as your office location. So as you can see, I think there's only one person who doesn't have a friend to do it with, but everyone else, there's at least 2 or more people. Where there might be 6 people, we'd ask that you only do it in groups of, say, 3 as a maximum. So 2 groups can go out and do the same site and submit a report from there. Now, did you want me to open up that template, Ken?
I'll open up one on my end.
Okay.
But I just stress that the sites that you've got for this one are real sites. And some of them don't have a huge amount of meat to the project, but they're real. And the assessment framework works just as well with small projects as it does to, we just finished a $12 billion project, Northeast Link in Victoria, Safe System assessing that. So it works for that. It works for very small ones. So I will take over, Kathy, if you don't mind. How do I do that? No, thank you.
So if you're in a situation where although the site might be near your office, but you, I don't know, live 150 kilometres away from that office, get in touch with me basically straight after this session, and we'll have a chat and see what else we can find for you. If so, Hook's just saying listed as South Coast, but is currently in Central West. So if that's the case, then you you do the one that's nearest to you at the moment. So if that's Central West for you right now, then do Central West. So you can certainly chop and change and just drop me an email to let me know. But if the site that we've got there is, as I said, yeah, a long distance away and you can't get to it, or there's no other sites that are good for you, then get in touch and we'll have a chat.
Thanks, Kathy. So when you download that Word document there, which is a copy on your memory stick as well, it is a template from, it's the Victorian template, right? And they're publicly available on the website in Word document. And the reason they put those out of there is the consistency of what is produced out of these safe system assessments. And for now, it's as good as any. And in fact, the Victorian government said, you know, we're more than happy for people to rebrand them, you know, put their own branding on them, whatever they want to do. Just let's use the same headings, use the same format, and we're very consistent with what is put out. Queensland doesn't have a specific format, so let's use this. It's what Australia and New Zealand are using. I've seen slight tweaks on it, but generally everybody's pretty comfortable with this. So this is a rapid one. You can see they're rapid, and I'll tell you a little bit about that shortly. What I said is only complete the highlighted sections. I don't want you to spend hours in mind-numbing administrative writing stuff out that's not just showing us you understand the process of a safe system assessment. So just just change the highlighted sections. So you don't need to do anything in the exec summary. I don't even need an exec summary out of you. Don't need the table of contents or the list of figures. I don't need this background, because I'm just going to zoom in here. Here's highlighted. We need to know who you are or your team. So if you do this as part of a team, put all the members' names in there. You all should submit it into Moodle, but I do want to see all the team members' names in that bit, so we know who's done the same one. Don't need to give us this background. Of course, if you were doing a real one, you'd fill all of this out. Okay, this is the context stuff. You don't need to fill that out. What we do want is a brief description of the proposed works. What is planned? What have you seen in the design? And if you've made any assumptions, you can list them here. Then you do this sort of summary of how you've arrived at your results. So obviously you're going to write this at the end after you've actually got some results. You have the overarching results out of 448. You've only got one design option, but if you had 25 design options, you'd have 25 rows in this little table, all with a score. And then we want a graph. And we want a graph that looks like this, but it's your own graph. And you're going to need to go into Excel and make that graph, or if you've got some other graphing software, go nuts. But it's got to look pretty much like this. The reason for that is that's what people are looking for often, to give them that picture of how risk is presenting in this project and their different options. You can change the colors and stuff, obviously, but it's more about just clearly showing that. And then you fill out a matrix on the existing conditions. And you fill out the whole matrix. Lots of dot points, how you've arrived at the likelihood score, how you've arrived at the severity score, and your totals. Then you copy that and you create one more. So you're actually going to have to copy it and paste it again. That's the bit that I haven't put that second one in there for you. You're going to have to do that. Copy it, paste it, and then cross things out. So you use the strike through little button there. I'm sure you know it. So you're going to go, you've got whatever, something in there. There you go. And you're going to go, no, that doesn't exist in the new one. Strike through that, and then maybe something new is there, or you just simply make it red. That's it. And you keep doing that. And the final, or two final things you do is come up with a few ideas, treatments for considerations, things that you suggest they change in their design, or they add to their design, or more things that they could do to get better alignment with safe systems principles, lower scores. Treatments for consideration, you're putting things in there. And you'll see here that there's primary and supporting. So anything you're putting in there, signs, lines, that sort of stuff is going to be in here. You know, add another warning sign. Now you'd write a little bit more than just add warning sign. You'd write add a warning sign at this location. You know, this type of warning sign at this location to do this. But you know, just for now, that's supporting. Line marking is going to be supporting all of that. Primary's got to be something pretty substantial, not necessarily by cost, but by reducing the severity of the crashes, virtually eliminating. Don't worry about a conclusion, but do add a photo. We just need a photo to show that you went out to the site. Now, some of you probably be tempted to say, oh, I don't need to go to site. I know that area well enough. We have some obligations to to TMR, first of all, but also to our consistency of our course, that people who are granted that sort of safe system assessor certificate have been to the site and have actually gone through this whole process. I would say that, you'll probably find things while you're out there that you wouldn't have picked up. And I think that's a good reminder of the importance of getting to a site. And I think it's always, it's fun to get out on site often, get back into the real world for some of us who sit at a desk too much. And so wear your high-vis vest, and then just take a photo of yourself, your group, or whatever it is, just to show us that you were there, and plonk that in. We don't really need to see the site photos, lots of site photos. We've got good indication of the site, but just that one to prove you went out there. And then you're going to upload that to Moodle, just the way you did for your other assignment. Ideally PDF it if you can. That helps us a little bit, but if that's too much, just upload the Word document. If you have trouble for some reason uploading it, you can talk to Kathy, or if worst comes to worst, you can just email it through, and we'll deal with it. But ideally, put it into Moodle, and then it'll get marked. So, are there other questions coming in, Kathy?
Yes, there are. Do we enter project response for treatments, i.e. it's shown as highlighted?
Oh, great.
Yes? No. No. Oh, no. You went.
Why is it highlighted? I am highlighted. Okay, that's fine. So, how do we do that? Is it download the copy that's in there and see if it's highlighted in that one, Kathy? Because great question, whoever asked that, because you do not fill out the project response. This is like a road safety audit in that sense. What you're doing is leaving that intentionally blank so that the project team actually remembers that they have to respond to this stuff. So this should not be highlighted, and I apologize for that.
I'm just fixing it now.
Right. Thank you for that. No, that should be left blank. Yeah, so you do that, and then they would fill out that. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's good attention. Good attention to detail right there.
Surprise, Kathy.
Okay. All right. Now I have loaded a Central West one in there as well. So yeah, I had a few responses about chopping and changing and that sort of thing. So that's all good. As I said, get in touch with me after this session if you've got any issues or your site is too far away. You can do it on your own if you prefer to work on your own, or you can do it with other people that are in have the same site. No more than 3 people for each group though, please. And what else? Anything else, Ken?
Yeah, so we're giving them a week off, well, a week to sort of do this. So we're back, what, Thursday? So a week from today. Is that right?
We are. So it's a bit of a tight time frame, but we think you can do it. So basically, if you can get out between now and next Thursday session to get out and do the site visit and get cracking on your report, it's a really good opportunity basically to come back in the last session, and if you've got any questions or if there's consistent things, good opportunity to ask them there. So we have made the due date next Wednesday at midnight or something like that. So you can spend half your night marking them, Ken. But if you can't get it in by then, that's no big dramas. Just try and get out and do your site visit between now and then.
Yeah. We're fairly well progressed along with it by a week from today, because you can ask those questions, seek clarification. It's a great time, and everybody will learn from those questions that you're asking, because they're probably facing similar things. Also, we're here to help you. If you start the ball rolling and you're confused, or you come up with a specific thing and you go, well, it's not covered in any of their fact sheets, and this is annoying me. Yeah, don't spend too long being frustrated. Just shoot an email through, give me a call, give Kathy a call, and we'll talk you through it. We'll point you at that. We'll send you some examples. We're here to help make sure you get your head around this, and we get some really great safe system assessments. Kathy, I don't think there's a quiz after this one, is there? Or just the one question, is it?
No, I think there is a quiz, because they're very good. So there is a module 4 quiz, and then there's a safe work method statement. I always get those around the wrong way, in there as well.
There is a quiz. Good. Okay. I'm sure it won't be too hard, and it'll probably help clarify some of the things that I've been talking about. Make sure you're on the right page there. So it's I love safe system assessing. It's great fun. It's fun to put numbers to this and see where risks popping out. And the safe system assessment framework is not without its areas that could be improved. That's for sure. And certainly Austroads is looking at a potential version 2.0 of that sort of stuff. And so as you do go through it, be thinking along those lines as well. Think, okay, that's doing that, but there could be some more refinement if this was altered. So I'm thinking that you're more than just sort of using it, but use it and think about what it's doing.
I'm going to share just one more quick thing that you mentioned, Ken. Your safe system assessment framework, your primary and supporting treatments. This is what you talked about here. It starts on page 19 or page 15 of that particular document. So you've got your different tables in there.
Yeah, and that was one of them.
Okay.
So there you go. You've got other crash type. Well, I think go to a different one. Others too. Pedestrians, good. So you see there in the green, safe system primary ones. Some people call them transformational ones, but yeah. So separated crossing point, very low speed environment. Supporting treatments, so you see there, reduced speed environments, pedestrian refuge. So we talked about refuge, supporting. Now, the sort of yellowy there and the reddy, you can combine those basically into supporting. There was this step towards supporting and another one. It all got too confusing. Basically, most of the guidelines have just combined those two to say that they're the category of supporting. And then there's some just other things which are not infrastructure related. Thank you for bringing that up, Kathy. And I do, it's one of the things I complained to Kathy after this session. I don't complain, I say, am I not explaining this right or not spending enough time on it? Because so many people seem to get this wrong.
It's learning, Ken, it's all learning. Questions that has come through is, how does a safe system assessment scoring change or support or conflict with safety BCR assessment using crash reduction factors?
Very good question. So crash reduction factors are based on real world evaluations of treatments, sort of often macro evaluations. So you've got to collect enough sites that have had a treatment implemented to give you some statistical significance on the reduction in crashes. Now, the reality is that you need to be so crash reduction factors, you need to get a lot more detail on those usually. Now, we use broad brush crash reduction factors all the time. But if you go and actually track down the research of the crash reduction factor, you've got to understand, is that a reduction in all crashes? Is that a reduction in fatal serious crashes? Exactly how does that play out? So the way that we do that is to use the, basically the easiest way is you go to the crash modification clearinghouse and you get that and it gives you some more information on it. Anyway, what I want to say to that is that your change in score will not necessarily align with a crash reduction factor. But that being said, it should be somewhat in that space. And the reason it may not is because we're skewing this to the fatal and serious injury crashes only. A lot of crash reduction factors will take into account the other injury crashes. So we're skewed it that way. And we're overlaying it with exposure in a modular sense in these categories. So it may skew things a bit. So I've got one of our colleagues is actually working on that at the moment, breaking down crash reduction factors into how they've got, and we were sort of trying to create that as a reference point. But there's still a fair bit of work to be done on that. But what you can do is do safe system assessment score to cost ratio. So safe system assessment score reduction to cost ratio, which is not a benefit cost ratio in the same sense where you put a dollar value to human life and you put a crash, how many crashes were there in the past and all of that. But you can get this much risk reduction for this expenditure. And that's a good ratio to go with. Crash history doesn't play a role usually. We sometimes look at crash history just to give us an indication of, factors that might influence likelihood or the spread of severity of these things. But it definitely not, if you go, there's no crashes. If you write into your report, there's been no crashes in the area, so I'm giving the likelihood a score of 0, you're not going to pass. I mean, that mentality, that's not the case. It just means that it hasn't presented yet for one reason or another. So crash history is just an indicator, one of the indicators of future risk. Anything else?
No, and we're right on time, so we will end it there. Any questions or comments or concerns or anything at all, please get in touch with us during the next week. Thanks again for your participation. Thank you, Ken. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.